When my family saw this in the late 2010s, we left the Messianic Jewish Synagogue and we started a Pronomian church on Saturdays. And that church was such a blessing, and we really saw a lot of people. We saw the church that was started as a instrument that the Lord used to help certain individuals and certain couples. And it seems like once that was done, it's like the Lord said, okay, these people have been helped. Now it's time to disband it. And people moved away, and there wasn't any fighting or anything like that. It was all hugs and tears when we left, when everybody left and went their own way. But now we were sitting there going, what in the world do we do? What do we do now? And we knew that we wanted to be in a community, but we didn't know what to do. I got 4 kids, so that's another element that you have to think about is the kids. We started going to a Presbyterian church, and the Presbyterian church we went to for a year was a blessing. We learned a whole lot. We learned a lot about our family. We learned a whole lot about where we differ theologically. I studied a ton of Presbyterian teaching. I studied a ton of Baptist teaching because of the place that we were at. I kind of realized the differences and where the chips were lying on that. We decided to leave that church because of some theological differences. Once again, there was no fighting. There was no bad words shared or anything like that. The leadership of that church hugged us and said, let us know where you guys land. We love you guys, and we'll talk soon. So we left, and then we decided we were going to try to do a home fellowship. And I'm telling you all this because what I want to convey to everyone is we've hit a lot of these different boxes. People will say, oh, I'm in this place. What do I do? Well, we've probably been somewhere close to that place. We've been in the Messianic Synagogue. We've been in a Presbyterian church. We've been churchless, right? Trying to do home fellowships. And so we spent a year trying to do a home fellowship, which really, it never really took off. And once again, I think that this was of the Lord. The Lord was leading us somewhere else. And this whole time during that year, we were going to Sunday churches, seeing if the Lord had something else for us. And we went to a couple of churches that were clearly not going to work. And then there was one church that was about an hour away that seemed good and seemed like we could kind of fit in there. It was large, and there was a great kids program. But ultimately, the Lord brought us back to the church that I grew up in. It's a non-denominational Christian church. There's about 500 people at the church. And I think I was really the one that was pushing against going there because, you walk in and all the people haven't seen you in 25 years, and they kind of pinch your cheek and, oh, my word, I remember when you were this tall. And it's a little uncomfortable, right? But I kind of swallowed all of that, and after a couple of weeks, it died down, and now it's just it's good to be there. The good thing about this church, and this is what's very different for me compared to other people who are trying to find a church, and we probably visited 30 churches, I would say, in the year that we were looking for a church, and the difference is. There's a multitude of differences. Number one, we know that they have the gospel right. There are some non-negotiables for me that I just said these are absolute non-negotiables, and this church checks all those non-negotiables. Now, of course, we're in a Sunday Christian church, so they're going to disagree with us on things like the festivals, the Sabbath, circumcision, eschatological takes on stuff. But ultimately, because my father was a pastor there for 25 years, he had these debates before he left with the pastoral board about Torah observance. And it took over a year for them to go through these debates. And there was papers being written back and forth between the pastoral board. And because of that, they know where I stand. They know, like the pastors know what I believe, but they also came to the conclusion that my father was not teaching a false gospel. In other words, he wasn't teaching salvation by works. So they know that we believe in salvation by faith. So that debate has already been had for me by my dad. I don't have to have that. And so that is a huge piece of the puzzle that most people have to deal with, that my family now is not having to deal with. Now, there's younger pastors that have now come in, and I'm sure that there will be some questions sooner or later about those kind of things. But for right now, it feels like a very nice home for us. Ultimately, what we wanted was we wanted our children to be around other believers. And when we were trying to be in our home fellowship, it was us and a couple other couples that didn't have any kids. And so our kids really felt like, oh, some people come over on Saturdays, but we read the Bible, but then can we go play? That was always the question. Can we go play now? And so there was really no connection. So we wanted our kids to find other friends who were believing friends. And there's already been questions. My son, which I find the questions for my kids to be learning opportunities. My son was talking about in his class, and he has friends now in his class, and they asked him why he wouldn't eat the gummies, why he couldn't have the gummies. Because they give gummies out every class. And my son said, who at the time I think was 10 or 11, and maybe 11, he said, well, I don't eat pork because the Bible says not to. And his friends said, Jesus did away with that. You don't have to keep those laws anymore. And my son didn't say anything, but then he came to me and he said, they said this to me, and I didn't know what to say. I was like, great. Let's talk about that. You can always say, I don't know, but I'll find out, Continue listening to this conversation by clicking the full show link on the left side of your screen, or check out the video on the right that YouTube thinks you'll like. Don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel so you never miss content from Messiah Matters.